Welcome to the Culinary Scene Kitchen here at Roth Living in beautiful Denver, Colorado. My name is Ben Davis. I am executive chef here at Roth Living, welcoming you to this virtual product demo of all things Sub-Zero, Wolf, and Cove. We're so glad that you are joining us today with your interest in our marvelous kitchen appliances. So today we'll try to give you a little more insight, a little more information about what these appliances can mean for you as they inspire you in your own kitchens in the future, whether you're building a new home or perhaps you're simply remodeling your existing home, or maybe you're just replacing some appliances. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable with those selections by giving you a pretty good high-level overview of what these appliances are all about. So before we get started, just a couple of things I want to mention. The first thing will be that the link that you use to come to today's live streamed event on YouTube will also be the link that you can use in the future to revisit today's session as a recorded YouTube video, so that you can come back, review, refresh your memory on something. Maybe there's something I said a little too quickly or something along those lines. We want to make sure that you're perfectly clear, so use that same link that you came with today to revisit in the future. Secondly, and this is obviously very important for those of you who are curious about some of the features of these appliances and need some more information, you may have questions. If you have a question and you'd like to answer it today or get it answered during today's live streamed event, you will need to create a YouTube account. You can do that right there on the screen. Create that account. Then during the session, you can use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen to type in your question, which will be relayed directly to me, and I will try to repeat the question and then answer it for you, so you get the answers today and not have to wait to type in a comment and then get a response back. It's much easier just to type in the question and get that answered for you today. It may lead to something else as well, so that might be great not only for you, but for some of the others who are joining today's live streamed event. And last and certainly not least, I want to make sure to mention that if you are anywhere within the proximity of one of our 5 showrooms in the greater Midwest, you're near Minneapolis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, or Denver, we would really encourage you to make an appointment with one of our showroom consultants to come in and see these appliances live and in person, get all your questions about design and product answered for you in person at one of the showrooms. It will be immensely beneficial to you if you can do that. So if you are going to be in the neighborhood of one of our showrooms, I would encourage you to reach out, make that appointment, come in, spend some time with a consultant, maybe spend some time with one of our chefs, get some questions answered live there. Who knows, there might even be some food in it for you as well. So today we want to try to cover just about everything we can when it comes to Sub-Zero, Wolf, and Cove. We're going to obviously focus a lot on the Wolf part because that's where the cooking happens. That's where the real fun and magic sort of happens, but you can't start this event. You can't start your kitchen without Sub-Zero. We really have to talk about that food preservation tool. It's so very important because if your ingredients are, well, let's just say less than ideal because they haven't been stored in a perfect environment, well, then it doesn't matter how great your cooking appliances are, you may not be able to resurrect them to a state that makes you, stand up and shout about how wonderful the appliances are, or quite frankly, the recipe is, the dish is. So we have to kind of get a sense about where this starts and how Sub-Zero makes such a huge difference in your kitchen. And that's really, it's a tale of engineering and how we engineer these marvelous products. Sub-Zero pioneered the built-in refrigeration system back in the early 1950s. We've been making them ever since. And it was that engineering that really took us to a level that we weren't there before that. We were really just kind of making freezers and things like that. But now the built-in refrigerator really revolutionized what it is we did. And we had to engineer it so that we had 2 things that were of paramount importance to make your product maintain its integrity, maintain its flavor, maintain its appeal visually, right? And we had to control those 2 things. And those 2 things are humidity and temperature. How do we do that? We make sure that the temperature is always maintained at a degree so that you are always holding that steady temperature. There's not great fluctuations, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of technical stuff about defrost cycles, but suffice it to say that you should know that your Sub-Zero is programmed to hold that temperature within 3/4 of a degree in either direction of exactly where you set it. That fluctuation, or that lack of fluctuation, I should say, right, will maintain products that are very susceptible to not liking temperature variation, like milk, cheese, dairy products, things like that, that tend to spoil if temperatures rise and fall, right? And we do that with a very sophisticated series of thermistors so that we know exactly where the temperature needs to be corrected in the refrigerator. So if you're opening the doors a lot, but not opening the crisper drawers, we're going to correct temperature in that open air part, not in the crisper drawers. If the reverse happens, then that's where we're corrected. But what we're also correcting for is the other most important fundamental part of a refrigeration system, and that is humidity. And humidity is so important to maintaining the integrity, especially of your vegetables, because if in your refrigerator there isn't enough humidity, well, the humidity needs to be made up for, and so the refrigerator says, I'm going to suck all the water out of your vegetables, right? Because it finds the water, it wants it to be more humid, so it extracts the water from your vegetables. We compensate for that by making sure that we have different types of evaporation systems in our refrigerator and our freezer, so that in a refrigerator we always have a wet evaporator, which means there is always additional moisture being funneled into the refrigerator. Also, a new feature that we have on all Sub-Zeros is the ability for you to add an additional 2 to 3% of humidity, relative humidity, in the refrigerator, particularly in the crisper drawers, so that on very dry summers or very dry winters here in Colorado, where you need that extra humidity supplied in your refrigerator, you can now choose to do that. So now you have control to add that extra humidity. No more of that little slider thing that goes from one side to the other that tells you whether the humidity is high or low. No, this is actual adding moisture into the cavity so that you're making sure that it stays more humid for a longer period of time. The opposite is going to be true of our freezers, right? Our freezer uses what we call a dry evaporator system, where we're exactly extracting the moisture from the air before we place it in the freezer. That will cut down on freezer burn. That'll cut down on all those things that make freezer items, right, spoil, go bad, dry out, right? Now, in this case, we're maintaining it so that there isn't enough moisture in there to create that frost in that freezer, but it also will keep that food at a perfectly stable temperature, right? So you don't get ice cream that goes through a freeze-thaw cycle where you end up with ice cream that's melted on the top and frozen on the bottom, which makes it granular, all those things. It's really the difference between those two systems. Remember as well that in all Sub-Zeros, those systems are completely separate. There is no mixing of cold air from a freezer in a warmer refrigerator. They're not taking that cold air and pumping it up there. We just don't do that because there's not humid enough, right? And it's obviously much too cold and it'll freeze your lettuce and all of those other things. All of these little technological innovations go into maintaining the integrity of those ingredients. We take it one step further with our air purification system, that with every Sub-Zero refrigerator, you're going to get the world's most advanced air filtration system in your refrigerator. The Pure Air system comes standard on every full-sized Sub-Zero refrigerator, and inside of this box, the combination of titanium dioxide crystals and an ultraviolet light help purify your air every 15 to 20 minutes automatically, filtering the air through this, which traps harmful bacteria, mold, mildew. It also eliminates odors and ethylene gas from the interior of your refrigerator. So now you can know why your products last so much longer, because there aren't little bugs landing on them, not literally bugs, but you know what I mean, the little tiny ones, right? Not to create spoilage, to create a much faster degradation of those products. So this Pure Air system, again, standard on every full-size refrigerator, is going to make sure that instead of just having to change that box of baking soda every month, you just have to do this once a year, and you're ensured that multiple times an hour that air is being cleaned so that you don't notice odors in your refrigerator. You notice how much longer your food is going to last. How much longer, you say? Well, we make sure to tell you how long your food will last in your Sub-Zero by placing in every single one these two plastic cards. One card is your manual. a manual that describes to you where in the refrigerator is the ideal spot for placing dairy, for placing deli, for placing your produce, all color-coded on the front side of the card. On the back side of the card gives you all the features of the inside of your refrigerator, so you know if something's going wrong, where maybe you can look to troubleshoot, but also it'll just give you a good description of how the refrigerator should be used properly. But the card that I'm particularly fond of is the food preservation card. This card will tell you, right, how long, and this has been tested by the engineers at Sub-Zero, your food should last, you should expect it to last in the conditions of not special modified conditions or anything like that, just simply how long are your strawberries expected to last? How long is a head of lettuce expected to last? All of those things are listed here on the card, so as you shop at the market, you can say, there's a great deal on strawberries this week. Maybe I'll buy some extra because I know that I can get them to last at least 10 days in my Sub-Zero before I even begin to worry that they might turn on me or start to lose some of their integrity. This is what you want to have with you. I wouldn't take it to the market, but you could memorize a lot of these things or just get a good sense that most items are going to last much, much, much longer than you would expect in a normal refrigerator. So this card comes standard with every single one, so you really can take advantage of the full complement of positive attributes that this refrigerator has. So don't think that it's just a refrigerator. It really is a tool for preserving your food so that when you do go to the refrigerator and you are going to make something with some fresh strawberries or something like that, you know you can feel confident that it's going to be exactly as you expect. So start with the Sub-Zero. For me, for a kitchen suite, you have to start with that and then work out from there. And I really find that once that Sub-Zero is installed, you can then start to really have fun with the different cooking appliances, but knowing that you have this as your backbone in your kitchen is really going to be important. So let's talk a little bit about what makes Wolf, and it's really boring. The first subject that we're going to talk about is really boring, and that's just heat transfer, right? That's what cooking is, right? Just transferring heat from some form of a cooking appliance, whether it be a cooktop like this induction or gas. Perhaps it's an E-Series wall oven. It could be any of those methods. It's just transferring heat. You're just taking the heat from the appliance, moving it sometimes through a pan, putting it into the food, and voila, you have cooked food. The question is, how comfortable do you feel with those appliances doing what you expect them to do, right? When you call for 350 in the oven, is it going to be 350? We need to know that. We need to feel confident. We need to feel self-assured that as we start cooking on whatever appliance it is, it's going to respond in the way that we expect. And that's really what I find with Wolf is one of the nicest things is that you can be you can predict it. You can predict that outcome long before you start knowing that it's going to turn out. So one way that we can master heat transfer, right, is through induction. And now we've talked a lot about induction lately because it's been in the news and we've all talked about the fact that, we're worried that someone's going to take our gas appliances away or something like that. But induction, really has been around for a very long time. And it's a fantastic way to cook because obviously the heat transfer on induction is actually many, many times more efficient than gas because of the connection between the burner pad and the pot that you're cooking with, right? This pot sits perfectly flat on this burner. It's exactly the same diameter. So all the heat that is being generated, right, through this system is being captured by the pot, right? I'm not losing anything in translation. So for those of you who don't know exactly how induction works, induction is a set of magnets. So there's a magnet underneath each one of the burners here. Those magnets, when we run a current through them and place a pot that has enough ferrous metal inside of it on top, react together. The molecules in the pot get very, very agitated by the electromagnet underneath it, and they vibrate. The more they vibrate, the more friction they create. The more friction, the more heat. So therefore, when we are placing a pot directly over one of these burners and we're using a nice high setting, the pot itself is superheating. Not the burner, the pot itself, because I can remove it, put my hand on the burner while it's still on and without any fear of burning myself. So we can now do that, right, on all of these burners. Wolf induction is designed to mimic gas in how it responds. And this is true of most induction, right? That wherever you use induction, you're going to get results very, very similar to the way you would cook with gas, in the sense that when it's off, it's completely off. When it's hot and it's high, you're getting that full complement of energy. But the minute you turn it down to a lower heat setting, it responds absolutely immediately. So much like gas, when we need an actual true high, we have the ability to get a true high very, very quickly with induction. But when we need the low, when we need the simmer, when we need the control, which is where you do most of your cooking, right? We don't do a lot of cooking over high heat unless we cook pasta every single day, right? Or something like that. But we want to make sure that we have that control over the low end temperatures. The way Wolf does that is create a calibration on the burners so that you get a very slow incremental increase of heat until you get to the very end when it goes up very steeply. So now you have a lot less room, right, when you're talking about high, because high is just as hot as you want to, as hot as you can get it. But now I've nuanced it so as I go lower, right, I've got a lot more control. So when I need that accurate simmer, or when I need to be able to melt some chocolate or some butter, or hold a sauce or something delicate that I don't want to ruin, right, I have the control over that. And this is when I was talking about this whole idea of being confident, being assured that your product, your appliance is doing what you expect it to do. I hear so many times from clients that say, I can never get my range to simmer accurately. It's either boiling or it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there completely not moving or not keeping warm at the temperature that they would like, right? That frustrates them. Well, Wolf has given you that control so that I can get it down so low, right? So low that it's actually less power than a 100-watt light bulb, right? Now, it's very hard to cook anything with a 100-watt light bulb. We all remember owning perhaps the Easy Bake Oven back in whenever they made those. What was that, the 70s, the 80s, right? Everybody had an Easy Bake Oven, and they were using a 100-watt light bulb to do their cooking. And well, we got so frustrated waiting for those cakes to finish baking, we just ate the batter out of the bowl, which is what most of us did anyway. But this burner here, this melt burner, has that ability to go 92 watts, right? 92 watts is not going to burn anything. It's not going to ruin anything. You can set it with confidence and walk away and take on other jobs in the kitchen, other tasks in the kitchen without this kind of nagging fear in your head that, I got to keep going back and checking this because it might ruin it if it gets too hot or it reduces too much or any of those things. Having that control over Wolf induction is really, really, really critical to making this such an advanced appliance, right? So it's very exciting to have a new version of the Wolf induction cooktops coming out this year in 2023. We've upgraded a lot of the panels and the controls with a lot more functionality. Very, very sleek and modern design, which is one of the big appeals of induction itself, is that it does appeal to that very modern sort of contemporary aesthetic. So again, if you're loving induction, definitely explore it. I would get the question, all the chefs in the company probably get this question at least 5 times a week, which is, which do you prefer, in gas or induction, right? Honestly, I'm not sure I prefer one to the other. They can cook in the same exact fashion on either one. It just doesn't matter, right? It's just a question of what is the style that you like to cook? How much do you cook? Do you do a lot of, do you like to flambe? Do you need more than 5 burners, right? Because you're limited to 5 on induction. Do you want more? Do you like built-in griddles or grills? Those might push you into gas, but in many cases, induction is going to be so satisfactory for you in terms of how it performs at a burner level that you're just going to have just the time of your life, using these appliances, knowing that you're going to be confident and feel comfortable using and getting the response from the appliance that you really want. So we've got some strawberries that we've just started a quick little sauce here. We just used a little bit of elderflower liqueur, right, to kind of perfume it with a very spring-like aroma. And we're just going to let this just simmer for a few minutes, and then we're going to finish it off. And while we're finishing that off, I want to talk to you a little bit about Wolf dual flow convection ovens, right? I mean, convection is one of those terms that a lot of people throw around and they're thinking to themselves, convection, it's always ruined everything I've ever cooked. Or I'm not really sure, do I raise the temperature? Do I lower the temperature? Or do I check it early? Or do I lower the temperature? Or is it one or the other? Is it both? Is it neither? What is it about convection, right, that I need to understand, right? So, and it gets even more confusing when I'll step away and show you that there are 10 different cooking modes in a Wolf convection oven. 10 modes. Well, that could be just like, you've been to, like, you go to Whole Foods, sometimes you step in and you look at the wall of olive oils, and there's 57 olive oils there, and you're thinking to yourself, how do I know which is better? What does this taste like? What does that taste like? How do I use this one? How do I use that one? You look at the same thing here. You have 10 different cooking modes. You think you understand bake, good. You probably understand broil. I'm sure you do, right? But then there's all these other ones. Convection, roast. What's the difference between roast and convection roast, right? Why do I need a dehydrate mode, right? All of these things, right, built up here, right? 10 different ways to cook, right? So 2 things about that. First thing is, don't worry about knowing how to use it. Because you live in the Roth territory, you live here in our distribution zone, we offer training, right? For all of you who decide to purchase our appliances, you are offered at least 2, if not more, training sessions with the chefs at your local showroom or here at the Culinary Scene to make sure that you understand exactly how to use all 10 of those modes in your oven. So you're comfortable deciding between when to use bake and when to use convection and when to use roast. All of those things are going to be explained to you. So be comfortable knowing that training is provided by us, right? Whether it's through this media or through a live in-person showroom event, you should definitely take advantage of it because it will really foster, I think, your a comfort level with your appliance, right? So why do we give you 10 different cooking modes? Because we can all agree, right, roasting a turkey at Thanksgiving is a very different thing than baking 3 trays of chocolate chip cookies for an after-school event with your kids, right? That we're using the same appliance, but we're talking about something that takes 15 minutes and something that takes 2.5 hours, right? And we want very different results. We don't really want our cookies to have a crispy outside and a soft, moist, juicy inside. And at the same time, we don't want our turkey to be, cooked, overcooked, or undercooked. We want to be able to control it. So we need to give you the proper number of ways to cook in your oven. And we do that by providing you with 10 different cooking modes, which are created by where does the heat come from? Is it below? Is it above? Is it both? Right? And how much comes from below and how much comes from above? And if we're using the convection fans, if we're using those convection fans, right, we want to know how is the air being circulated so that I get that perfect tray, whether it's middle, top, or bottom, or all 3 simultaneously. We want to make sure that we're using our convection system properly. Well, one of the things that's unique about Wolf, or I don't know if it's unique, but it's certainly true about Wolf and Sub-Zero, is that we like to test everything. We like to make sure that we know how everything is going to work. And when we tell you that you can bake in the convection mode, right, on all 3 trays simultaneously, never once having to worry about, I'm going to need to, open the oven and switch this tray to the bottom and the bottom tray to the middle and all of that. You don't need to want to do that. You need to know that it's going to work exactly as it's supposed to work, right, when we use the convection mode. Well, we test that to the point where we take 6 identical cakes, 2 on each rack. We place them in the oven, we put it in convection, and we bake those cakes until they're all done. Then we take all 6 cakes out, we take them out, we put them into a special camera, a box that's a perfect light, perfectly lit. Put in there, take a picture. We then feed that data into the computer. The computer looks at it and says, okay, well, from analyzing the data points on the surface of each cake, I can tell that we need to change the algorithm by 1/2 of a nanosecond in this part in order to make this part of the cake brown just a little bit more than this part, right? This is how crazy they are. They bake, like, I don't know how many cakes a week, probably hundreds, right? Just to test that algorithm so that you, when you decide, oh, I'm going to bake 2 trays of something or 2 individual cakes on separate levels, you know they're going to turn out exactly the way they're supposed to, because the algorithm is programmed to make sure that they do exactly that, right? It's not a question of your guessing, right? It's a question of your knowing that it's going to turn out exactly the way you're supposed to. So 10 different cooking modes, all tailored to a different style of cooking, whether you're baking a single tray, multiple trays, you're roasting, you're broiling, you're roasting vegetables, whatever it might be. There's all these individualized items. Not to mention the fact that there is the gourmet mode. The gourmet mode in the Wolf vernacular, regardless of which oven we're talking about, is a mode that allows you to utilize the programming in the oven with step-by-step instructions for how to walk through and prepare that particular item. You don't have to have a recipe. You may not have ever prepared this item in your life, but utilizing the gourmet mode gives me choices between meat, seafood, baked goods, all of those items with step-by-step instructions that tells you exactly where you should place that food in the oven, whether or not you should use a temperature probe, and then it'll tell you, I'm going to cook it using this mode at this temperature for this length of time. So you can literally walk through it without ever having to walk away from the oven. You just prepare the food, pop it in, select that mode if it's in there, and then it'll walk you all the way through. So that gourmet mode, again, is a feature that is standard on all Wolf wall ovens and dual fuel range ovens, induction range ovens. The only place you won't find a gourmet mode would be on an all gas range, because they have a more limited capacity in terms of where the heat can be generated from. They don't have quite the sophisticated programming that the electric ovens do. But it is a great thing when you're just feeling a little bit like, I don't know if I want to cook this stuff tonight. I don't want to try to figure out how I want to do it best, so I'm just going to hope my oven knows how to do it. The gourmet mode is there for you for that reason alone. So again, don't be intimidated by those 10 different cooking modes. Know that we're here to train you. Know that those cooking modes are designed so that you can get the maximum quality out of your oven in terms of the finished product. It's such a beautiful thing. So here's our beautiful strawberry sauce. Smells wonderful with that elderflower liqueur in there, and we're going to serve that with an olive oil cake that we prepared earlier today using one of our other appliances that we'll get to here in just a second. So at this point now, we're going to swing on down to another vignette so we can start talking about a few other Sub-Zero and Wolf appliances down here. All right, so then we'll serve that right there. So, all right, so we talked about that olive oil cake that we prepared, and we used perhaps the most innovative appliance that you can put in your kitchen today, the convection steam oven. There are probably many of you who have heard of the convection steam oven. It is a remarkable tool. It is not something that is new to the world. It has been in commercial use for many, many decades. However, it has only been in the last 10 to 15 years that we've made it small enough that you can actually put it in your home and now reap the benefits of both. A convection steam oven is a unique appliance because it provides you with 2 types of heat. Steam-generated heat, moist air, right, created by the oven, coupled with hot, dry air like you would find in a normal convection oven. Now we utilize both of those types of heat to maximize the efficiency of the oven, right? The benefits of steam should be pretty obvious. One, obviously, it's adding moisture. But what's more important about steam is that it accelerates the cooking process. And the best example of that might be if I'm going to cook some potatoes, right? I'm probably going to want to, if I want to do them very quickly, I'm going to boil them because it'll cook it much faster than just putting them in an oven and baking them, right? The speed that the water can transfer that energy from the appliance through the water to the food is much, much faster than if I just set those potatoes in a dry oven and wait for them to bake. Using water is going to accelerate that process twofold, right? In fact, it'll cut many preparations by almost 50% of the cooking time, right? But so those benefits of steam are incorporated now into the oven. The Wolf Convection Steam Oven, now we're happy to introduce the fact that we now have 2 different sized oven cavities, right? There is the basic 24-inch cavity, which is what we had offered up until the beginning of this year. But now we are very happy to offer a 30-inch wide oven cavity, which is the widest oven cavity on the market. Still not the tallest, but it is the widest, so it gives you it's an amazing amount of space that you can cook in with this oven, right? So 30 inches wide, right? Dual convection fans, just like in our big format ovens, right? But all of those modes that are allowing you to utilize steam. So when we baked this olive oil cake here in the front, we used this oven in a mode that traps the humidity in the oven, right? It traps it in there so that the cake stays as moist as it possibly can. Because that air is not being released from the oven, it's holding it so that that cake stays nice and moist, right? That's just one way that you can cook in this oven. To create the steam, you wonder, how do I get the water? Well, you have two choices now. You have this choice, which is the standard choice, which is a reservoir model, which stores water in a reservoir here, right? That you simply fill from your kitchen tap so that when the oven needs to make steam, it simply siphons this water into the boiler, pumps the steam into the oven, and creates that steam. But you also now have a choice to have a plumbed version, where you will have a direct water line into the oven with a direct drain line out. That allows you to never have to worry about refilling that reservoir. You simply can just have water on demand, so therefore steam all the time, right? So that's one of the other nice new additions to this. In addition to now a full broiler feature on all convection steam ovens comes standard, so that if you were concerned that you weren't able to brown the tops of something or things like that, you now can do so using your convection steam oven, because it now has the broiler element, which up until the beginning of this year didn't exist in our version of a convection steam oven. So we're very excited about this oven in terms of what it can offer you, right? It has the ability to be programmed so that food, particularly large roasts and larger cuts of meat, can be prepared to exact internal specifications and then done at an exact moment in time. So the convection steam oven, I will tell you right now, is the only appliance that you would add to your kitchen that within 6 weeks will probably have changed your life dramatically, because you will use this oven probably 85% of the time that you need an oven, right? All the things that it can do, right, would take actually 3 other appliances to replace it. A traditional convection oven, a steamer of some kind, whether it's a pot on the stove, a built-in steamer in your counter, and yes, a microwave. The microwave features that the steam oven replaces would be defrosting and reheating, right? It's not going to reheat your coffee, and it's not going to pop your popcorn, but it's going to reheat your food by adding a little bit of steam to refresh it, and then gently rewarming that food so it's never double cooked, right? So you never have to worry about food that's been overcooked and dried out, right? Because the steam oven is basically dosing the steam in such a way to refresh the food and reinvigorate it, and then heating it gently so that you get a perfectly evenly heated plate of food. And the other nice thing about a convection steam oven as a reheating tool is now I can reheat multiple plates simultaneously, so I'm not having to wait to reheat one plate, somebody eats, the next plate, next person eats, another plate, somebody else eats. Much, much easier when you're just using the convection steam oven to reheat all of them simultaneously. So again, look at a convection steam oven as a replacement for many, many different appliances in your kitchen, right? I dare say that unless you use a microwave, exclusively can't imagine what. I mean, my way of thinking, microwaves are not used for cooking. Microwaves are used for just convenience things. This is a culinary tool. This is something that you're going to use, but it also can do those things that a microwave does. It just does them better. So that's why I would recommend a convection steam oven to anybody looking at double ovens, or if they're only trying to reduce their footprint and have a smaller oven footprint. This oven can replace so many things at once without taking up so much space. So it's a much more useful item when it comes to that. So I'm going to go grab something out of my refrigerator so we can do a little cooking. And if you notice here, I have my salmon fillet is completely uncovered in the refrigerator because of that pure air system. There's no odor whatsoever in the refrigerator of fresh salmon, which is fantastic, right? You don't have to cover everything all the time and worry, oh, the flavor is going to transfer here and there. That's just not going to happen. So as we step over here to our dual fuel range, we start to talk about Wolf gas, and Wolf gas is a cooking medium. It's my preferred one because I'm a dinosaur. I like gas. I like to see my heat. I don't like to imagine it sometimes, but I understand why people love induction. But for me, it's about gas because there's a lot of customization that you can do with Wolf gas and make things the way you want them, right? So, but one thing that is consistent with Wolf gas, I'm just going to start cooking here a little bit. We're going to make a quick little ricotta gnocchi dish. We're going to cook some asparagus in some salted water just for a minute or so. But as the asparagus is cooking, we'll talk about one of the things that's common to all Wolf gas ranges, and that is our dual stack burner technology. And this was something that was a response to what we heard so much from our clients, which was, you know, I've had some great gas ranges and they get really hot and I can boil water pretty well, but the problem is, again, it's that control over the lower end, right? I can never get a simmer. I'm always scorching things. Things are heating up too fast. I'm burning stuff. I'm not really happy with that. How do we solve that problem? Well, you know, there's a lot of brands on the market. They do a lot of things to create those simmer burners. Sometimes they make a very small burner on the interior with a larger burner on the exterior. That just very much limits the surface area that's actually being heated above it. So is that the best way to create a simmer burner? I don't know. Maybe not. There's others that turn the burner off and on and off and on. The burner pulses so that the heat is on for a short amount of time and then it turns itself off, thereby reducing the amount of heat that's underneath the burner. What Wolf decided to do was we needed to give every burner the functionality of a simmer burner, and we did that by now building 2 burners into every single one. So in every burner that we build, every gas burner that we build, you have that ability to have a nice high hot flame when you need to boil water, when you need to do some sauteing, maybe you're cooking in a wok, maybe you're doing some frying, whatever it might be that really demands that high heat. You're going to have that on all Wolf gas burners because they have that primary burner right on top. But we can now take that temperature all the way down to its lowest setting and then go beyond it by igniting the second burner built into this burner. And that second burner is essentially that simmer feature, taking it all the way down to the lowest setting possible, right, of self. What the heck? How do I know how hot a BTU is? Because I'm not a thermal engineer or I'm not any of those things. How do I know how hot it is? Well, 100 BTUs is 3 Bic lighters. I think we can all vision in our head what a Bic lighter is like. So if you put 3 of those together and you put them on simultaneously, right, that's about 100 BTUs. You can probably all imagine to yourselves, well, I'm not cooking much very quickly with 100 BTUs. And you'd be right. You would not be cooking much with 100 BTUs. But having that amount of control, being able to hold a burner at 100 BTUs consistently gives you that peace of mind, again, when something is likely to scorch, likely to burn, likely to be ruined if it gets too hot, right? But you still want to maintain a minimum temperature with that for a long period of time. We want to have that kind of confidence, and that's where we get from that dual stack burner, because every single one has the ability to go really low, right? So when I need low heat in order to hold something at a consistent temperature, I have that. This burner here in the back, right, is one of those 100 BTU burners. It has been on, you know, fully at that lowest setting since, well, by my watch, it's 3:39 p.m., probably sometime around 2:15 this afternoon, maybe 2:30. I put in this pan in front of me some chocolate chips. Those chocolate chips have been on the burner now for almost an hour and a half. We can probably agree those are still chocolate chips. We can see their shape, right? They still look like chocolate chips as they sit there. But if we take a spatula and we stir the chocolate chips, we actually see that they are really fully liquefied chocolate being held at such a precise and exact temperature that they couldn't fall out of their own shape, right? They would hold that shape indefinitely until I stirred it and found that they were actually melted chocolate. So for those delicate operations, sauces, butter, chocolate, anything like that, now we don't need a double boiler. I can simply use this burner at its lowest setting without setting up the double boiler, without fear that this is going to scorch, that it's going to burn and be ruined simply because I left it on the burner for 4 hours. And in certain cases, I've heard it's been left for days, right, without the burner being shut off and not ruining the chocolate. Now, this may or may not be a good thing in your life, because the idea of having melted chocolate at a consistent temperature held on your stove for an indefinite period of time could cause you to eat a lot more chocolate than you might actually want to, and that could be a bad thing. So I don't recommend leaving it like this for multiple days, but you can just know that with that dual stack burner technology, you have the ability to hold with peace of mind, with confidence that it's not going to burn, it's not going to be ruined as we go about our cooking tasks in the kitchen. So that's that confidence, that's that assurance that I really believe Wolf offers, and I think it's probably the most valuable thing that we offer. So we're going to cook some gnocchi here. We've got some beautiful ricotta cheese gnocchi that we're going to cook in the same water that we cooked our asparagus in. But now we're going to make our sauce over here on another burner. So we've melted some butter, and we're going to let that butter just brown just a little bit around the edges so that we can get a lovely flavor, that nutty flavor that comes from browning beautiful unsalted butter in the pan to make a simple sauce for the gnocchi, right? But what do we want to serve alongside of this? Because now we have 3 burners going simultaneously, but here in the middle, what do we have? We have our infrared griddle. Now, next to the convection steam oven, this is probably, I think many of the chefs, this is probably their second favorite appliance because it is so versatile. Many of you are probably looking at it and thinking, oh, you know, I only make pancakes like once every 3 weeks, and I can't imagine why I would need all that hot metal in front of me, right? Because I'm not going to use it that often. I think you'd be surprised to find that you can use this griddle every day. You'll find a reason to use it. Whether you're making grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch and you're feeding, I don't know, 15 people at the same time. Or perhaps you're going to sear off a bunch of chicken breasts to make some filling for maybe some enchiladas or something like that, and you want to sear a bunch of them at once without having to worry about a pan, right? This is a cast iron skillet built into your oven, into your range, and it has thermostats that allow you to control the exact temperature. So you're not sitting there thinking to yourself, how hot is medium? Right? I don't know, right? But with ours, you have that thermostat on there, so you know exactly how hot it is. You know that 400 degrees is 400 degrees. So when I want to sear something, when I want to make, you know, if I'm searing some chicken breasts, or I'm going to sear some shrimp, or I'm going to cook fajitas, maybe I'm just going to warm up tortillas. I know exactly how hot it needs to be, right? And that, again, comes back to that training session that you'll get here, right, at Roth, right? So I'm just going to add a small amount of oil to my griddle top. And on the same time, I've got beautifully browned garlic in my brown butter. We're going to add some fresh mushrooms to that. Just toss those in, give it some low flame, and we're just going to let those mushrooms just brown really nicely while we take our salmon, right? And now we're going to cook our salmon. So we've got our beautiful salmon. We're going to just lay that on there. And the beautiful thing about the infrared griddle is that because of the consistency of the heat, right, I can be really confident that it doesn't matter which side I place it on, it's going to cook very, very evenly and very, very consistently because of the nature of the 2 burners that are underneath this. Those 2 18,000 BTU burners heat these 2 zones precisely with thermostats measuring the actual temperature of the steel that lays above it. So when we talk about 400 degrees for searing this salmon, we know that it's 400 degrees on the metal. It's not, I mean, if I took one of those infrared thermometers and I hit it, I would get a temperature right around 400, somewhere in that ballpark, but it's always going to recover to that temperature. It's not going to exceed that temperature, so I don't have to worry that it'll get so hot that when I flip over these salmon fillets that it's going to be so hot that everything's going to burn and I'm going to ruin everything. Nope, it's going to be maintaining that temperature for as long as I need it to. Where did I do it? Oh, there they are. So let's just slip our gnocchi into the water. There we go. And we'll just let those just simmer along. Perfect. So now we've got our mushrooms cooking beautifully over here. You can just see how lovely that brown butter and the garlic is just a beautiful deep shade of mahogany, right? We're just going to take our mushrooms a little bit further. But now, this consistency, this is just one of the ways that you can customize this top, whether you're doing a dual fuel range like this one, or perhaps you're going to do a sealed burner range top, which looks just like this. It just doesn't have any ovens underneath it. Or perhaps you're going to do an all gas range because you prefer the straightforwardness of a gas powered oven. Completely understand that, but the customization of the top is up to you. A griddle is one way that you could go. You could also put in a charbroiler, an indoor grill, if you will. If that's something that really appeals to you, you can have that lovely grilled smoky essence as you're cooking in your own kitchen without having to walk out onto the deck or anything like that. We also offer what we call a French top, right, which is something pretty unique, right? You don't find a lot of them around anymore, but it is a true hearkening to the commercial heritage that is Wolf, right? A French top is one of the original ways that restaurant chefs used to cook. It's just a plate of cast iron where you place your pans on it and you just shuffle them around depending on where you want the heat to be. So there's no open burner in the middle. It's just a plate that looks similar to this, except you can't cook right on it, right? So that's the nice thing about the griddle is here I can cook directly on that. So, but look at the control we've got here. We can just take these mushrooms down to a nice low temperature so that they're just cooking nice and gently in all that lovely butter. Let's add a little bit of fresh sage leaves to that as well, right? Just add a little more flavor to it. And you can see how comfortable we are just leaving our salmon here in place to sear, right? We don't have to worry about it because it's not going to stick, but we have our beautiful patina of our spice on there. Look how lovely those are, right? Because we're going to do most of there. We got it nice and brown. This one's going to flip first because it's the thinnest one. So we'll just let that sit and finish searing that nice crispy skin. And now that our sage is added to our mushrooms, let's just season that just a little bit with a touch of black pepper. So again, having this flexibility in terms of your layout. If you don't need a griddle, don't order one. You can get as many burners as you'd like. I think, if you want a 48-inch range top, you can get up to 8 open burners. And that's a lot of burners, let me tell you, right? But I think some people might think that's the way they want to go. If they do, we offer that as a choice, right? Again, come into the showroom, get a sense of how you like to cook, see the options presented to you, and then you can make that decision as you talk to the chefs, as you talk to the consultants. They're going to give you the best advice about how it's going to fit into your lifestyle, right? So look at this beautiful control, no burned garlic, beautifully cooked. We're just warming that asparagus through. Let's flip our last 2 pieces of salmon. Perfect. All right. And again, melted chocolate, all the comfort, all the things you need to happen right here in front of you, right? So now we've got our gnocchi have floated. We're giving them just a second to finish poaching after they've floated to the surface. And then we can serve them up alongside our salmon. So we see our beautiful little pickled zucchini and cheese tartlets that we've made, right? Using the convection mode in the E-Series oven. How lovely those turned out, just baked beautifully and very, very quickly so that you get a beautiful, consistent product using that. And then obviously, here's our rest of our menu today. So remember that one of the things about Sub-Zero and Wolf is that we are we are an American company, everything built in the United States, either in Madison, Wisconsin, or just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. So everything built in the United States with parts, some parts collected from around the world, but it's a third generation owned family company. So we can make decisions quickly and in your best interest all the time. So one of the great things about Sub-Zero is that you're not dealing with some enormous, massive corporation. You're dealing with basically a family that's running it, and I think doing a tremendous job responding to all the pressures that we've had over the last few years in the appliance industry. I think we've actually responded very nicely to that. So I think it's one of the other advantages that you'll find with our company is just that we jokingly call ourselves a customer service company that makes appliances, not an appliance company. So here we go. We've got our gnocchi. We're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top of that. Obviously, you don't need too much cheese because, well, the gnocchi are made of cheese. So there's that. Beautiful, right? And last but not least is our salmon fillets, seared on our infrared griddle, and you can just see how nicely the skin is crisping on the back side. Very evenly cooking. Just like that. So look at that control. And for those of you who are nervous that this is something that's hard to take care of, that's really much easier to take care of than it looks, because it's essentially like having a very large cast iron skillet in the middle of your oven or in the middle of your range. So when you're ready to clean it, what do? You scrape it off, you hit it with some wet towels, you steam it off, you get it clean, and just like you would care for your cast iron skillet, it's going to give you plenty of years of great service just because you've given it that simple cleaning of some steam cleaning right there like that. So we're going to let these finish cooking. So doesn't look like we've had any questions today. So again, if you do have a question in the future, you can certainly type it in the comments box, or very easily just contact your local Roth Living showroom if you're in any of those 5 cities that I mentioned earlier, and then you'll get all the answers that you need, whether it's through the culinary team there or perhaps through the design team or the technical support teams. They can all go ahead and help you if you're able to contact them with all of those questions. But really the most impressive thing is to come in, spend some time in a showroom, see the appliances up close, actually feel it, look and feel how well built these appliances are. When you feel for the odd seam that's not finished, won't find it. Open screw heads just exposed to everybody to see, you're not going to find it, right? You can keep looking, you're just not going to find it. It really is a testament to how well made and how beautifully crafted these appliances are. So I definitely would recommend, if you can, come in to those showrooms and have a look around to see them up close and personal. I think you're really going to find that that's going to be the most impactful way, right? There's so much that we can cover, right? Didn't even talk about Cove, which is our line of dishwashers. Suffice it to say, it is a dishwasher built to do one thing and one thing only, which is get your dishes cleaner than everybody else's dishwasher. We didn't set out to make it the quietest, it just ended up that way. We didn't set out to make it the easiest to use, it just ended up that way. So it's durable, well built. When you consider that, this is a dishwasher that's built to last 20 years, and the warranties that we back it up with speak to that, you'll know that this is not just some sort of throwaway dishwasher that you might have for 2 or 3 years and then it decides to, just to kind of to die out on you and you have to replace it all of a sudden. That's not the way a Cove is built. So come in, see the Cove up and close. It's the most boring demo on the planet. I'm not going to give you a demo on a dishwasher, but we can certainly talk to you about it as you come into the showrooms. So there we've got our salmon, and let's just embellish that just a little bit. Got some nice lemon that we'll just put about. And then to mirror that lemon flavor, we've just got some really beautiful purple sorrel leaves that we can just scatter across the whole thing, so you have just a lovely springtime presentation. So there we go. So all of these things can easily be done by you in your own kitchen using these remarkable appliances. So unless there are any questions pending, and I don't think there are, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm a little bit early, but that's all right. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this quick introduction into the world of Sub-Zero Wolf and Cove. We look forward to seeing you at one of our showroom with our consultants, or maybe one of our showroom live events. We would certainly love to meet you in person in the showrooms. So we just come on down and see us, get a look at these appliances up close, get all that information. And if you need more information, just reach out to those of us here at Roth Living. And the next time we see you, hopefully here at the Culinary Scene, it'll be us teaching you how to use those appliances the very best ways that you can. So we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, and have a wonderful evening.